So thank you for today. We have two sessions that are showcasing six policy briefs that have been put together by the teams here today. And for this morning's session, we've got three subjects. One is around building just and resilient peatland futures with local communities. The second is on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in Southeast Asian lowland peat agriculture. And the third is on safeguarding carbon stocks in tropical peatlands. And we have members of the teams here to present. And I will then hand over to Mark Reed to give an overview of the training sessions, but also a reminder that if you're interested in joining us for session 2 this afternoon, please let me know and I will share the link.
Thank you. Before that, just quickly to talk about the agenda. So hopefully our GPI coordinator, Diana Kopansky, can join in time. Otherwise, I can also start giving an overall overview of the GPI work and the research working group. Then we will have Mark Reed and Rosie giving another overview of this evidence synthesis training approach. We'll have each of the teams presenting their findings of the policy briefs. And then we will have a general Q&A at the end of the session and an open discussion for all of the audience here. So just to make it clear, besides the teams presenting the policy briefs, we have several GPI members, partners, and government focal points that will also be interacting with us throughout the session. And at the end, we will give some closing remarks from UNEP side. So, so this is us, but maybe while Diana joined, Mark, maybe you can start with the overview, and then if Diana doesn't join, I can start talking about the GPI. So if that's okay, over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. So my name is Mark. I'm a professor and research centre director at Scotland's Rural College, but I co-chair the research working group with Diana, who will hopefully be joining us soon. And so this is something that emerged from an early need we identified within the research community to have greater skills in evidence synthesis, which marries up with the need from the policy community to be able to have evidence synthesis as a basis for making policy. We did some early work on how to harmonize the kinds of data that we collect, how we report it and such like, so that we can facilitate more evidence synthesis in the future. We did training on evidence synthesis, and eventually we developed this training program where we sourced policy questions from the global peatland policy community via the Peat Quest project, and then trained researchers in evidence synthesis techniques and how to write policy briefs so that we could answer those questions very credibly, but also in a way which is accessible. And so today is about presenting those findings. This will be repeated at a different time zone and recorded. And there are other activities that we plan to do, which you'll hear a bit more about at the end in terms of pursuing these impacts to ensure that this is not just about a paper published in a peer-reviewed journal and a policy brief. This is about real change that makes a difference. Rosie.
Thank you, Mark. And we are really pleased with how this first round of program has gone in terms of the number of people that joined. So we had 42 in total from across the world, including key country partners for the UNEP GPI program. For example, in Ecuador, we had 2 participants join us, which is a fantastic win for us. And part of the success of this program is that we both have academics and practitioners in the field of peatland restoration and wider research around peatland conservation and management. In terms of some of the inclusivity that we are trying to promote with this program is, first of all, it's online. So we're trying to give access to everybody and to make it both live and with training sessions that can be done in your own time to make sure that we allow for different people's work schedules and timings throughout the day. Trying to coordinate globally is always a challenge, as you can see from today's session, but we were trying to be as open as possible. We can also see that we've had a really nice gender balance and trying to create more sort of opportunities across the board. So thank you again for participating and for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rosie. Now we're going a bit back to understand what's the objective of this program and to understand the background and the link to the GPI, the Global Peatlands Initiative. And I see that our coordinator just joined, so I hand it over to you, Diana. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much to Patrick, Rosie, and Mark to already have kicked off. As we've said, we've really been trying to support the pillars of the Global Peatlands Initiative. And one of the core pillars is the science and knowledge piece, where it helps to create partnerships, to create collaboration, and to advance research through interdisciplinarity and also across languages, across communities. Really, this is how we are getting to some of the impact targets that we've set for us as the UNEP Global Peatlands Initiative. And we mentioned a little bit about the Global Peatlands Initiative Research Working Group. This is co-led by UNEP and the Scotland Rural College. Mark Reed and I co-lead that research working group, which I'm hoping that many of you have found really dynamic and interesting. All of those recordings are found on the YouTube channel so that you can watch back the interactions. And we're not only just looking at that through the research lens, but of course, research for policy, this deeper connection between the questions you ask as the research community and the questions that you want answered as policymakers and practitioners. And so the other area of work that the Global Peatlands Initiative leads is this area on policy and practice. And this is really central to our mission. We want to emphasize the need that scientific evidence is used to inform and enable the development of national policies, of collective programs, including some of our joint proposals, which we've managed to build larger, dynamic, and diverse consortium around. For example, the EU Horizon funding that many of you have been participating in, but even more so through the International Climate Initiative, thematic calls for action, as well as other GEFT and vertical funds that UNEP and our partners have the privilege to access. And these policy briefs highlight the global and regional peatland policy developments, and they're also supporting the mobilization of action and also unlocking resources in line with the Global Peatlands Initiative aims. And the specific series of webinars aims to, of course, strengthen the skills and strengthen the network. So we're really doing learning by doing, actioning by doing, and bringing everyone collaboratively along. And we really know that rapid evidence synthesis is the way forward for fast action, and including building on the incredible resources that have been produced by our partners in this. So in continuing to strengthen the science policy interface for the entire complete peatlands community. And these are also living outputs. So feedback from yourselves will be taken on board with how we design and co-create future research, future policy webinars, and future research action agendas. Thanks so much. I'll pass it back to Patrick, who's kindly moderating the session.
Thank you very much, Diana. So now we can start with the first topic, with the first policy brief. And just to quickly remind the participants and the audience, the idea is to have 7-8 minute presentations, and then we will have 2-3 minute open Q&A, but also please feel free to use the chat if you have any questions on the meantime. So yeah, without further ado, I hand it over to team number 1. Thank you very much. Well, I can also briefly introduce them. So this is an international team, we have academic researchers, local policymakers, peatland restoration practitioners, and we have people from the UK, from Myanmar, Malawi, and Nigeria. And this first topic, we're going to be, the team outlines how we can integrate local and indigenous knowledge to improve the effectiveness of peatland restoration policy. So yeah, I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this training from my whole team. And do you want to share the updated slides, or is this okay? Yeah, I think there is no, yeah, it hasn't changed. Okay, never mind. Okay, doesn't matter. It's okay. So in the first slide, maybe, because we have another one in there. Okay, so our policy brief explore how just and resilient peatlands futures can build can be built in partnership with local communities. So as Patrick said, our team is quite interdisciplinary. We have expertise on soil science, tropical biodiversity, public health, social justice, different areas of science. So peatlands, we know quite well that they cover only 3 to 4% of the land surface, but they have been well known because they store quite a lot of carbon below ground. It says that at least 30% of the global soil carbon is stored on these ecosystems. So this is why they become so relevant for climate mitigation action. But despite this importance, the socioeconomic benefits that these ecosystems provide to local and indigenous communities remain poorly understood. So to ensure the long-term protection, there is a need for more equitable community-centered approaches to peatland conservation, restoration, and sustainable use. So understanding community perspectives is therefore essential for developing effective and inclusive peatland policies and practices. So I will give the word now to my other colleague who will explain the methodology that we use to answer our key question.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, we go to slide 2, which is to answer the question. The question of which mechanism in lowland peatland conservation, restoration, and sustainable management that lead to more equitable material outcome for local communities. The study adopted the rapid evidence synthesis using Prisma style screening. We search Scopus and Web of Science, and that's the data. Okay. The data for pre-review, that's from 2000 to 2025, focusing on tropical temperate region, local and indigenous communities, and social, economic, ecology, and environmental benefits. A comprehensive set of Scopus of Web of Science data yielded 476 articles. After removing duplicates, we had 378 articles underwent title and abstract screening, followed by a full text review of 31 articles, which met the lowland, peatland, and community center approach centers. 22 articles, and 22 articles were selected for the study, focusing on peatland criteria research. Then we had the search team, which the search terms, which includes keywords like peat, community benefits, and restoration. So we also use specific inclusion and exclusion criteria. If you check the table 1, to guide the data extraction and synthesis. Okay. These criteria includes in geography, we use the tropical and temperate lowland and peatlands, and then go to population. We also use the local and indigenous communities. Then the third one is the outcomes, which is the social, economic, ecological, and environmental benefits. The fourth one, which is the intervention, talks about the conservation, management, restoration, all of which was gotten in English language because almost everybody in the team understands English. Then we also had the inclusion and exclusion section. In the inclusion section, we included most of the 22 articles were selected for study focus on peatland-centric research. And then the search terms include the keywords like peatland, community benefits, and restoration.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anna, and I will just be summarizing the key findings. Could we just have the next slide, please? Thank you. So let's start with the geographic skew. Studies focused on Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia, and South America to a lesser extent. All other areas were underrepresented in peer review studies. So the promising approaches that improve both peatland health and socioeconomic equity were highlighted. So let's start with the paludiculture, which was suggested as a viable alternative to drainage-based agriculture when backed by secure tenure, technical support and market access, leading to reduced fire risk, maintaining carbon stocks and delivering stable livelihoods. Then we have mixed land use systems such as agroforestry, agro-silvo fishery, and non-timber forest products, which outperform monocultures. These systems spread risk, enhance ecological resilience, and reinforce cultural values and knowledge. Then we have the diversified livelihoods. When supported by collective institutions, they reduce dependence on destructive practices, improved equity, and increased resilience to environmental and economic shocks. The key success factors were the interventions when local and scientific approaches were co-produced. Restoration and management strategies were more effective and more widely supported. It was also seen that secure land and resource rights enabled long-term investment. Where tenure was weak or contested, the efforts were often undermined by land grabbing, also exclusion and conflict, which reduced both equity and ecological effectiveness. Diversified production systems, they became viable with access to fair and reliable markets, value chain development, cooperatives, and also local processing help achieve tangible economic benefits and also reinforced incentives for long-term stewardship. So together, these factors show that effective peatland management was not just a technical challenge, but also a social and institutional one, requiring rights-based, community-centered approaches to deliver durable benefits for both people and ecosystems. And that's all we got for you today. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We did say Kimela and Anna. Sorry that we missed Kimela, but thank you, Anna, for stepping in. And yeah, very concise and brief. Sorry that we don't have enough time to open questions right now, but please, anybody feel free to put questions on the chat. And then in the end, we will have a 10-minute slot in case you also want to engage with specifically the findings of this policy brief. Thank you very much, Team 1. So we can proceed with the next team. So for this topic, we have academic researchers in the different fields involving peatland restoration and ecosystem engineering from Indonesia, Australia, and the UK. And yeah, so this team is gonna be addressing best practices in reducing greenhouse gas emissions from lowland peatlands, specifically in Southeast Asia. So I hand it over to you, Team 1. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to present on behalf of Group 2, but we will all just introduce ourselves first. So yeah, my name's Sarah. I'm a postdoc at University of Melbourne, and I work mostly on peatland disturbance and recovery, both in the Australian Alps and in Indonesia. And unfortunately, Chiruni couldn't join us today. She's on holidays, but she's also a research fellow with me at the University of Melbourne, and she did her PhD on greenhouse gas emissions from tropical and alpine peatlands. We've also got in our team Carol, who's going to introduce herself.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm a postdoc at University of Exeter, and I work mainly with ecosystem function and greenhouse gas emissions from tropical pristine peatlands.
Thanks, Carol. And Adi Kunaso.
Hi everyone, I'm Adi Kunarso. Thanks, Sarah. I work for National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia, and I work mostly in assessing how the change of land use affect the peat soil properties, and I have also involved in the pilot regeneration of tropical peatland. Thanks.
Thanks, Adi. And we also have Dewi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dewi Handayani, and I'm from the Peatland Ecosystem Restoration Working Group, Ecological Center, National Research and Innovation Agency Indonesia. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Dewi. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So, similarly to group 1, we followed the PRISMA protocol, which is part of the GPI training. With the method we only used the Scopus database, and initially that delivered 513 different records. And after we went through our exclusion and inclusion criteria, we ended up with 51 articles that we included in our rapid evidence synthesis. And from those 51 papers, we also extracted the greenhouse gas flux data for CO2, methane, and N2O so that we could run our own sort of mini meta-analysis on the data, which we grouped into 5 land use types. Next slide, please. So I think, again, this is similar to the previous group. We had, from the 51 studies, there were data reported from 167 sites around the world, and we didn't initially set out to focus on Southeast Asia, but the majority of the research papers that were included that met our criteria were from Indonesia and Malaysia. So you can see from the map there, I think there's only a handful of studies, maybe 4 studies that were from the Americas and the UK. The rest were from Southeast Asia, and there's, again, lots of areas around the world where there was no representation at all. We also found that there was far more data reporting CO2 fluxes than for methane and N2O. But there was also a lot of differences in the quantification methods for these fluxes between different studies. So the method for collecting data, as well as the timing of data collection, meant that it's quite hard to standardize the data across these large data sets in a way that's meaningful and reliable. So from our own analysis, we found that there's a lot more variability in the global warming potential from the fluxes reported from peatlands with modified land uses. So that included perennial crops, annual crops, and otherwise degraded or drained peatlands. There's a lot more variability compared with intact peatlands or secondary peat forests. So that has implications for sort of the uncertainty in estimating and predicting fluxes from these agricultural land uses in peatlands. So our key findings, which have implications for policy, are firstly that there are really big differences in the geographical representation for greenhouse gas emissions from lowland peatlands under agricultural land uses. So there's a lot of areas around the world where we need more data and more research, but also these different methods make it difficult to make sort of broader or draw broad understandings across across different peatlands in different areas when the measurements are quite different. So there's sort of work to be done around standard methodology as well. So there's large variability, increases our uncertainty in policy recommendation and sort of actions for greenhouse gas mitigation. But what was consistently shown in a lot of the studies is that intact peatlands should be a very high priority for conservation. It's a lot more cost effective typically to preserve peatlands rather than restore degraded peatlands. And a lot of the research in our synthesis also showed that the processes of land use change themselves cause huge amounts of greenhouse gas emission before the peatlands are even used for agriculture. So rewetting and other restoration methods frequently came up as effective methods for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from lowland peatlands, but it can be very slow and it can be very resource intensive compared with protecting peatlands that are already in good condition. That's it. And yeah, a big thank you to everyone that ran the course and provided us with the opportunity to do this work.
So here we have academic researchers and technical specialists in different fields involving peatland restoration. And we have scientists from Germany, Indonesia, Peru, Cameroon, India, so plenty of different countries. And here we're going to be discussing challenges and urgent knowledge gaps that we need to address specifically for tropical peatlands. So I hand it over to team 3. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. So I'm going to present on behalf of team 3, so topic 3. And as introduced, we're an international team, and our team expertise lies in different topics like peat ecology in general, greenhouse gas flux monitoring, hydrology, paleoecology, geochemistry, and climate adaptation. And yeah, our topic is safeguarding carbon stocks by halting tropical peatland degradation. So just as an introduction, why do tropical peatlands matter and why they are at risk? Tropical peatlands cover approximately 380,000 square kilometers, and on average, they have over 2,100 tons of carbon per hectare. So, and they can reach depth up or down to 13 meters. They accumulate under, like most peatlands, under high water levels and under year-round high temperatures, and they're mostly peat forest swamps, so forested peat systems. They're very vulnerable to changes in precipitation patterns and vulnerable to drought, and nowadays also a lot under pressure by anthropogenic land use. So our initial question was which types of tropical peatlands are most vulnerable to the loss of carbon stocks due to climate change? So kind of a very long question. Next slide, please. And also our methodology was that we started in a rapid evidence assessment using the databases Web of Science and Scopus like the previous team. And we set out with an initial set of articles of 650, which we reduced in the end to 117 articles that we included into our REA. And we included any tropical peatlands, of course, so from coastal to inland and mountain peatlands. We used or looked at different methods, so how carbon stocks were measured or modeled. We looked at peat accumulation rates, above and below ground carbon stocks, greenhouse gas fluxes, and looked at different timescales. So looked at paleoclimatic studies, more present or future conditions, and we addressed climatic and anthropogenic stresses. We excluded, of course, anything that is not in the tropics, but also non-peat systems like mangroves, which are often or sometimes perceived as peatlands, but they are not. And we excluded book chapters, conference proceedings, anything that is not peer-reviewed. And of course, no English, like any literature that's not in English language, we excluded as well. From all those 117 articles, we extracted information about the region, the peatland types, so vegetation, for example, and we looked at the geographical settings, the natural state, kind of carbon stocks, and the different stressors. Next slide, please. This is an excerpt of our results, just to, like a wild mix of what we found out. So we can see on the top left that the interest in, or the research in tropical peatlands really increased after 2010, so which is showing growing concern about peatland vulnerability. And in these studies that we found, the most researched peatland types were forested, so peat forest swamps. But among these, most of the investigated peatlands were already deforested, converted, or degraded, while only a quite low number was still naturally forested, and a very small proportion of the studies looked at naturally not forested studies. When we are looking at the distribution of studies by region, we can see that there's a clear focus, or a research focus, on Southeast Asian peatlands. So over 66% of the studies were in Southeast Asia, while especially peatlands in Africa are really underrepresented, with only less than 9% of the studies mentioning African peatlands. And out of these 10 studies on African peatlands, 9 of them were even reviews, so we are really missing out on case studies from African peatlands. We had a look at the different stresses and divided them or separated them into climate and natural stresses. So climate in black, natural, no, sorry, the other way around. Red, anthropogenic stresses, so there's a mistake, I'm sorry. And we found out that precipitation, or changing precipitation patterns and drought, are the most important climate stresses, as well as fire and temperature, even though fire could be, well, often is anthropogenic as well. And in terms of anthropogenic stresses, we mostly have agricultural, plantation, anything that is related to land use change, like deforestation, drainage, anything, these stresses. When we look at the distribution of these stresses in the different regions, we can see that precipitation and drought are important in almost all regions. So Southeast Asia, South American peatlands, Central American peatlands, and African peatlands. But then, on the other hand, human impacts are most severe in Southeast Asian peatlands, while they're less relevant in South America at the moment. Next slide, please. So coming to the messages and key findings. So what is most important is that there is vulnerability of tropical peatland carbon stocks to climate change, but it depends on the region and how climate change is manifesting in this part of the world, or in the topographical setting, like if it's lowlands or highlands, for example. And one key message is, the most important one probably, is that degraded peatlands, so not really the natural peatland type, but degraded peatlands are most vulnerable to climate change. So the carbon stocks stored in there. And this is regardless of the location. So it doesn't matter if they are the lowlands or the highlands, as long as they're degraded, they're most vulnerable. And within this, drainage is the most important factor. Across the tropics, Southeast Asian peatland carbon stocks, which are, as we saw in the previous slide, they are mostly degraded and drained, so making them the most vulnerable as well, if we look at the region. Very important is also that there are large knowledge gaps for African and neotropical peatlands, and also in montane peatlands are less well studied. So that means for researchers and academics that there are no more studies, especially long-term studies needed, especially in the understudied regions. And we need more detailed climate projections for these regions as well. So for decision makers, that means we need to prioritize the protection of intact tropical peatlands. So we need to preserve the remaining intact systems, especially in America and Africa. And we need to improve the resilience of other tropical peatlands to climate change based on their specific needs. And we need to integrate multiple perspectives, of course, from academics to local stakeholders and policymakers and donors.
Thank you very much, Clemens. I really liked your results slide. It was pretty clear. So yeah, now we can open the floor to whoever wants to ask questions specifically for this topic or for the others. And also, yeah, so we want to remind you that here in the webinar we have, of course, the researchers who took the training and who prepared these policy briefs, but we also have GPI partners, different organizations and focal points from different countries that might also have specific questions for any of the teams. And we also have other UNEP colleagues. So now I open the floor to whoever would like to ask any specific question or start the discussion in general. So
thanks, Clemens. Thanks, everyone. Really clear presentations with very well evidenced, clearly, conclusions. Clemens, on that last one, I thought what was really interesting is it seems that you're suggesting a shift in emphasis. I think a lot of the policy work that we've been doing in recent years, involvement of markets as well, focuses on restoring degraded peats, but actually there's if not an equal, even maybe a greater emphasis on preserving intact peatlands where they exist. Is that a valid interpretation of your work, that we need to shift that emphasis more, perhaps?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think I forgot to mention that, of course, also rewetting already drained system is very important because as our study also showed, degraded peatlands are most vulnerable, or the carbon stocks in degraded peatlands. So it's also very important to rewet to protect what is already being threatened. But of course, we have to hold or to stop intact peatlands from being converted as well. True, yeah.
Yeah. So,
but I wouldn't say that one is more important than the other. It always depends on, of course, yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yes, it's really nice presentations. I'm really interested to see the results of the different teams because we also, my question is more related about bias in this kind of assessments, because when we use the term peatland, it's a very technical term that we have been possibly, it has been very explored in Southeast Asia, how all of these rapid evidence are showing, like there's a lot of studies there. But South America, Africa, it doesn't mean that there is nothing there. It's just that they haven't been published as peatlands sites, because the word peatland is technical word. It has been just found out and used quite recently. So how do we address this bias in our results? Because there is, in my team, there is a big discussion if we include or not a few extra studies that were not included because of the word peatland. But I knew them because I come from South America, I knew the studies, and there is a lot of discussion. Should we include it or not include it? So you say something about a continent, you don't say anything about the continent, just based on not following the steps. So yeah, bias. How do we deal with bias in our research, at least in this evidence?
So that's still directed at me, right?
In general, to all the teams, because we have been all assessing the papers, and for me, it was a bit of frustration not to see the papers from South America in the list. Well, I started searching, yeah, because why did they not come in the list? Like even there are a few, you need to, what to say about this? It's because if, for example, in your study, you say, so the most threatened and vulnerable ecosystems are in Southeast Asia, but possibly because you have a lot of papers there. compared to what you got in other continents. Doesn't mean that the other continents,
Yeah.
because they are not degraded, they are not vulnerable. Yeah, so it's just the conclusions not can be a bit biased on what we say. As well, for example, my team talk about law restoration, but because most of the papers are from Southeast Asia, but there are completely different approaches in South America, in Africa, and if you just grab a couple of papers, they will show you that. So, but of course, it's about number of papers that we are citing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we also had the same issue. I mean, because as I mentioned, there's basically nothing compared to what is there on Southeast Asian peatlands, on African peatlands. So we don't really know much about them. And yeah, that is why one of our key messages is also that we need to address those knowledge gaps.
Yeah, thanks for that, Eurydice and Clemens. And maybe I'll just speak from the global perspective, because that's exactly what we experienced when we started the Global Peatlands Initiative. So it is definitely something that is the global community is trying to also show that even if we may call some of the ecosystems very differently, bogs, mires, swamps, forested peatlands, XYZ, we are trying to unify because of the urgency for action on peatlands. So some of the early work as well done by the research working group is to actually have this common criteria, the common approaches to actually doing research. And I think that that is something we have taken account of and noticed. And it's really important to be very, honest and open about these biases. We had the same thing when we did the State of the World's Peatlands, the Global Peatlands Assessment, where we saw that in some regions, it was easier to compile and bring together the language around peatlands, while in others, there was much more publications in different diverse languages and using different phrases. So I think as this group goes along, we can find these challenges and seek to solve these together by having, a whole sort of glossary of terminology in the actual, when we search, when we identify the language around peatlands. So also going back to the Global Peatlands Assessment, the State of the World's Peatlands, as a resource where we actually include the different names of peatlands in different languages, because we're also facing that challenge that people are speaking different languages. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, I see another hand. Franz, please, over to you.
Ok, oui. J'ai eu vraiment le plaisir de travailler aux côtés de chercheurs vraiment talentueux, Clemens, Angui, Diwakar, Mario, de différentes régions du monde. Ce fut une très grande expérience. Et cette recherche résonne comme davantage un appel à l'action. C'est call for action. C'est un appel à l'action, notamment au niveau africain, où justement les tourbières sont encore... la recherche en matière des tourbières au niveau du continent africain n'en est encore qu'à ses débuts, c'est timide. Et durant le processus de mise en place de la politique d'orientation, j'ai remarqué que beaucoup du moins les recherches au niveau africain sont davantage conduites par des chercheurs externes, qui viennent d'autres continents. Et c'est vraiment l'occasion de mettre vraiment des mesures pour davantage impliquer les jeunes chercheurs africains à s'intéresser à ces tourbières, à nos tourbières tropicales, parce que le continent a un très gros potentiel en la matière. Les politiques publiques devraient intégrer les tourbières dans leur politique nationale d'adaptation au changement climatique, dans leur NDC. Donc, c'est vraiment un appel à l'action et j'ose espérer, parce que à mon niveau, j'essaierai de disséminer nos résultats auprès des différents conseils scientifiques du Cameroun, où je suis. Et j'ose espérer qu'au niveau global même, que des mesures soient prises pour soutenir les jeunes chercheurs africains, les intéresser les jeunes à conserver ces tourbières. Parce que l'autre problème, c'est qu'on ne connaît pas très bien aussi quel est l'état des tourbières en Afrique. Quel est l'état des tourbières? On peut se dire que ces tourbières ne sont pas encore suffisamment dégradées comme ailleurs, notamment en Asie du Sud. Mais il faut justement la recherche pour connaître l'état des tourbières en Afrique et prendre des mesures pour que ces espaces-là jouent véritablement leur rôle en termes de services écosystémiques, soient intégrés dans le marché carbone, etc. Thank you.
Maybe just let me take a quick reaction because we do know that there have been challenges in accessing knowledge. And we do also know that there is quite a large gap between when the research community collects content and the data and information and when they're able to publish it. So for example, many of the African and the West African research has been actually undertaken by a diverse group of people. The Congo Peat team, of course, if you want to look at the latest research, the compilation and diverse research, we have the Congo Peat project team, which is funded by the UK, the NERC grant. And also we're collaborating with them as UNEP in our Iki Congo Peatlands project to actually not wait until things are published before you can actually access that. Secondly, due to the attention from the Global Peatlands Initiative and this community, we have this Congo Basin Science Panel, which has been established. So the Congo Basin is a wider program that is looking actually at the state, and at the heart of that, they're also looking at peatlands. So we do know that all of you in this call, and also all of you around the world, many of you are joining into this research community new, or you may not have access to the wealth of knowledge that's been published in the past. And that's what we're trying to also create through the Global Peatlands Initiative, also through our resource lists. And one of the things that Mark and I have also been working through the research community and this research network is to actually get people to join up to do this collective fundraising, to do these concepts and create opportunities for people to get their funding, get the funding that they need to do the research work. Quite often, and especially in Africa and in developing countries, there isn't this element of funding readily available for science undertaken by the members in that country or researchers in that country. But more and more, we are seeing locally founded research institutes that are being funded both nationally and also internationally. And some of that is also being enabled through the establishment of the International Tropical Peatland Center. So it is a moving place. It's a moving space. But I think connecting across the world is really how we're going to move and shift the needle and draw more attention and improve not only the research funding, but also the research methods. If I may, Patrick, could I take us to the closing remarks? Because of course, we are time bound here, and this is the first in many conversations that we're having. But I do want to thank everyone for participating. I especially want to thank all you researchers who have dedicated their time to also apply this and help us learn as practitioners, policymakers, and a research community. Help us learn how to improve it. We are in this journey together. So do continue to feedback, reaching out to the research working group, also tapping into the Global Peatlands Initiative group, where we try to connect on policy papers and also then upload relevant policy papers to the various platforms that are out there. We're focused on impact, and we are also working with, the sister projects where we can, such as the Wet Horizons, which got some EU funding to look at this topic, both nationally but also internationally. And we're looking on how we can expand this research training. And we've got a link to the methodsforchange.org, where we've been delivering this research training together. And then, of course, join the research working group and spend some time also to browse through the YouTube channels. You might have actually missed some of those research trainings that we did, but we've recorded them, and also looked forward to some upcoming topics in the new year. And then I want to finalize with a real grateful recognition that for us at the Global Peatlands Initiative at UNEP, we are delivering a project with the kind and generous contribution to the International Climate Initiative funding from the German Ministry of Environment, that is BMUKN. And please do see these tags here where you can take a picture for accessing some of the resources and the resource base that is continually being built together. So the more that you can share with us, the more that we're going to post on our website. We're going to improve its operation in many languages, in multiple languages, and also to join the Global Peatlands Initiative Research Working Group so that we can carry on this collaboration together. We did have some unanswered questions in the chat. We will come back to you. Thank you so much for also registering, and we hope we do have your permission to reach back out to you following this this webinar. And also, you can reject that request and let us know when we do when you no longer want to be receiving information or content from us. We will gladly respect your wishes on not reach out to you on upcoming topics. But do watch this space. I think it's exciting, it's emerging, and we've got some of the most incredible, innovative researchers, impact researchers, award-winning impact researcher Mark Reed here, that are helping us on this really critical journey together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.